Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Sapient Insights Group HR Huddle. I'm your host, Teri Zipper, alongside my co-host, Susan Richards, and we're back with a new episode of The Pivot Effect. This is the show where we talk about you, whether you're an employee, a leader, a mentor, a coach, what's possible and how to get there. If you're feeling stuck, if you're following rather than leading, if you want to lead, or you just feel like you've outgrown what you're doing and you want to do more, we got you. On this show, we focus on the skills and capabilities you need to thrive in the future of work, regardless of what you do, because there is always a future. Sometimes we just have to make it. Today, we welcome Jennifer Ravalli. Jenn is the founder of Maverick Meridian, and she focuses on go-to-market strategy and systems for companies that dare to be different. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you for having me.
It is so great to have you. I know we've been talking for a couple of years now and talking about some of the just, things that we've all done in our world. And I found your story so interesting that we said this is a perfect conversation for the pivot effect, and we want to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, it's an absolute honor. And I am excited to share more about kind of my, I would say, evolution.
Yeah. Well, so let's do that. So for listeners
Mhm.
who haven't met you yet, I'm sure there's people out there listening that know you, but for those who don't, tell us a little bit about the first chapter in your life. Like what drew you to it? What was your dream?
Sure. So, interestingly enough, I actually started out more in the entertainment side of the world. Like I've sang my entire life and somehow found my way into wanting to balance creativity with business. And so ended up in the marketing realm. So I've spent most of my career growing companies through kind of the marketing and sales lens, but have really looked at how do you take different pieces of what's going on in a career and in a company to be able to kind of transform your career and your experience. So I've done runs at, Fortune 100 companies like ADP, where I was able to do some really exciting launches as well as take on operational leadership roles. And then have also had a lot of fun growing companies that were smaller. So VC and PE led organizations, they all take different kinds of rigor and different kinds of strategies in order to think about how you grow them. So it's been between kind of services functions and technology and really kind of taking that through to eventually ended up in the C-suite a couple of times in the chief marketing officer role. So from there, it was fun but different, and what ultimately kind of led to the transition of where I am now.
Yeah. So what was there some trigger? Was there something, some defining moment, or was it just sort of a gradual thing that you kind of grew into? What was it that made you feel like you needed to make a change?
So I think like everybody who is, I'm an early millennial. Um, and we were all kind of taught that you go for that brass ring. You do everything right. You go to college, you enter the career, get married, get the mortgage, all of that kind of thing. And that eventually you would get to a place in this spot where you would feel evolved and fulfilled and happy with like your career choice and where that was.
Yeah.
And I
All's
think
all's perfect in the world,
yeah,
right?
like, all the things you're supposed to do. And I think I did everything I was supposed to do. I was always somebody who kind of followed the rules in that way, I guess. But I do like to break them too. But I started to realize that no matter what you did, there was still no finish line. And, even being in the C-suite and where you feel like you should have some level of control over kind of the outcome and where that was, that, I continued to run into difficult situations where it felt out of control, where it felt like the politics were more important than the actual success of the business. And, I had 2 children, in, later than many in some cases that I worked really hard to have, and I hadn't been spending the time with them. And I was far too, I would say, stressed out over things that shouldn't matter in growing a business. And wanted to do something where I had more control over the outcome. So I started having those feelings around 3 years ago. And when I was in a particularly difficult role, and actually a good friend of mine and I created the Jen and Katrina happiness plan at that point. She took the leap a little sooner than I did. But then I took on a new role. It's hard because you think W-2 and being in a job is the right thing to do and what, is stability, but in many ways it's not. And so I really valued my mental health, my home life, and wanting to do really great work over that. And finally decided in the fall to make a big change.
Yeah. There's a lot of, that fear, right? The fear of, failing in this new endeavor. Or, I mean, probably what 99% of us fear is, can I make ends meet? If am I going to still be able to pay the bills if I make this change, right? And so that I think tends to hold a lot of people back. I mean, as it potentially should, right? If that's the kind of, thing that's gonna be important to eating next week, right?
Yeah, and there was, constantly this thought of it, am I putting my family at risk by making this
Mm,
change?
yeah,
Um, but it felt like it was at least something to try
yeah,
and see if it could be something that could be both better for my family and, better for us in terms of, the having something of value and building it in the vision of the company that I've always wanted to work for. And I think that that has meant more and has motivated me to be able to make sure that I can support my little family in addition to having an incredibly supportive husband, who has been just a great support through the change. But that, like, we are able to do this, like, and we are able to push through kind of the questions and doubts
yeah,
that plague along the way.
yeah. Because it's not just about making that decision, right? It's about what other decisions in my family or my personal life or whatever it is, do I have to change in order for this to work, right? So there's potential that you're leaving something behind, right? And how do I recreate that?
Yeah, interestingly enough, the thing that I was probably most afraid to leave behind was leading a team.
Mm,
It is what
yeah,
lights me up and what has been the hallmark of my career has been developing others and, bringing along other leaders. And it's different to be by yourself and on your own and um, thinking through, hey, like, my collaboration is different than when I'm, helping somebody succeed. And so that actually held me back for quite a while of making the change, but I've found new ways to do that. And that has been a really exciting part of this journey is that I didn't have to give that up to go out on my own and have more control over the work and the people I worked with and the types of companies that I was making successful.
Yeah. Jen, I am fascinated by what you said earlier about your happiness plan. Can you tell us more about that? I want to know how to have a happiness plan, and I'm sure our listeners do too.
So, Katrina Purcell, who is a very good friend of mine, we were working together for a period of time and both felt like we wanted to own kind of where the strategy was going being able to help build that through, but also being able to protect our time in a
Mm.
way that we were not able to. In addition to wanting to work with, setting guidelines, not that I want to say anything of but having a no asshole rule, like in terms of the
Oh,
people
yeah.
who
Yeah. Yeah,
We have an explicit rating, so
we have that, and we also have a PETA tax.
ah, I love
Mhm. If you know, you know.
it. But so we really tried to set parameters over what was the environment that we both wanted and what were the things that we wanted for ourselves and our families to make life better and feel fulfilled in the work that we were doing. So we had put together this whole idea around, she's an operations expert and incredible at that side of the business. And then I was always like the growth expert. So, we talked about kind of what were our different lanes, how would we collaborate. I reference her on my website as someone who I collaborate with.
Mhm.
But we've been able to be both supportive of one another, while still having our separate companies along the way. So it's really nice to be able to work with one of your best friends in a capacity where, like, you're helping them see through the challenges of what they may question and, being able to support that. So she was, not only the first person to be like, finally, I'm so glad that like you finally decided to adopt our happiness plan. But, we both love the Little Words Project. And so, she gave me a number of bracelets to like continue to tell me, how to make sure that I was following the path, manifesting the good things, and giving everything time for it to come to fruition.
I love that, and, you mentioned earlier about one of your fears being leaving your team behind. It sounds like you're finding ways to build teams both internally and with your clients to fulfill that need and that desire that we all have to connect with others.
Absolutely. I not only am I reaching back into kind of the people who I've worked with in the past and making sure that I'm kind of helping them see, but it's opened new doors to other folks who are thinking about what they want to do next. I'm really involved in organizations like Chief, that are all about kind of helping women leaders kind of pull through and, break through in terms of their careers. But that's all been a lot of fun, and then I'm actually working on something called the Maverick Mom Squad, because
Oh, that
I
sounds exciting.
I haven't announced it yet, so this is the first time
Oh,
I'm even talking
tell
about
us
it.
more. We have breaking news, ladies and gentlemen.
But, I'm noticing a lot of folks are taking themselves either out of the workforce or stepping back in some way because they want to have more focus and they don't want to work 80 hours a week. And that's okay. And so, how do you keep your hand in it? And how do you do the things that you want to do? So, I'm a part of a really great network of CROs and CMOs that help me in my career with go to market partners. But like, not everybody is at a CMO or CRO role and can join something like that. So, how
Right.
do we just have a casual way of being able to say, like, I want to do it my way too? How do I do that? And, is this a network that can support each other through that as well?
I love that. It's like you're building a community of people who can help each other and can reach up and reach down and reach across.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it hopefully will help me scale, as we're kind of scaling Maverick and, it's starting to get exciting and there will need to be more hands and legs. And so how do I kind of reach into my network and find people who are interested in doing that?
Yeah. I know that when I started, what is now Sapient, that was one of the first lessons that I learned is I couldn't do it all by myself, and it was so important to find people that I could trust and other folks that had similar ideas and similar desires. So I'm glad that you're finding that early in your pivot. Um, so I know you're still fairly early in starting the new company. What is this, what is this chapter? in your career teaching you that you couldn't learn in your last chapter?
So I think what I would say it's teaching me the most is that it's okay to have an opinion. I think when you're tied to a corporation, it can be really hard to say what you mean and to be more direct about what's going on in the industry or what are the things that people need to be considering because you're kind of always, I don't want to impact the brand. And I've become my own brand and very intentional in terms of why I chose the name of my company, because it's about being a rebel with a cause. You can't get anywhere if you're going to blend in constantly because you're too afraid to stand out. And I see that so often with everybody wants to look like each other or they're too afraid to stand for something, and, like, that can make it hard for somebody who wants to have an opinion on, like, what the world of go-to-market looks like. How are we thinking about the evolution of HR technology and, like, what work needs to look like? And I wanted to have more of a voice, and I've been slowly but surely being bolder in my narrative and in the way that I talk about the things that I really care about. And that has been something that I am growing into, but feel will be a big change for me through this journey.
Wow, that's really powerful, Jen. Thank you for sharing that. Um, when did you start to recognize that your past experience wasn't really that separate from your future, that it was actually preparing you for it?
So it's interesting because, like, I still get to work with a lot of people who I've worked with in the past, but it's been more on my own terms. And then I've always felt like I've curated my career to pick up different experiences along the way. Most people in a marketing role don't get asked to take on like a mini GM kind of position, and, I was able to do that. Now, do I ever wanna do that again? I don't know, but there were
But
some
you have a choice now.
definitely, interesting things about managing frontline workforces that, is probably not something that's on my bingo card, but it was something that taught me so much, and I look at this in the same way, is every piece of my journey, even my recording career early on when I was young, like, is something that I've taken with me through my career now in either how I show up or how I think through a problem differently than someone who's maybe come up along a single path.
Mm. Um, that's really intriguing. And one of the things that I hear from colleagues is they don't really understand how their past is preparing them for their future. And you mentioned your recording career. What's one thing from your recording career that you still use today?
So I often am the person who is teaching somebody how to give a presentation on stage.
Oh.
What are the tricks? What are the ways that you're going to evolve your presentation style? And a lot of that comes from my history performing. I am very comfortable being in the background doing that, but I love also being out in front. And so I take that with me too. And, I'm actually doing like my first paid speaking engagement next week. And
Oh,
that's thank
congratulations.
you.
Nice.
But that's like an exciting thing that had I not done that early on in my career, it wouldn't have been something that I could give to others or that I could use for my own support, throughout the process.
That's
Yeah. It's
fantastic.
amazing how those we underestimate the skills that we learn very early on in life, regardless of what job we're doing, right? There are skills we build during those times, whether we're a frontline worker or, a manager or whatever. And they really do shape who we are later on and make us, I think it's what makes us very unique, right?
You
Because we've
know,
had very unique experiences.
Absolutely. And I always tell people who are going into a leadership role that you need to spend time working in a call center, even if it's just a week, so that you can hear what that feels like. and
Yeah.
understand like the pressure that that can bring to the people who are working with you, and
Yeah.
also in a restaurant or a retail location, because the speed, the type of complexity of what you're doing, it often gets not thought of in the same way, but like your ability to understand the customer and like to understand the workforce is very different if you've had those experiences in addition to kind of driving up through a typical kind of business role.
Mm. So it sounds like rolling up your sleeves and doing the work of the people that you're leading and, supporting is important to you.
Absolutely, yeah. I never want to ask somebody to do something that I either haven't tried or couldn't do myself.
Yeah.
That to me feels like there are always going to be situations, but I want to be able to know what they're going through so that I can
Mm.
support them through that transition too.
And that doesn't mean that you have to do it all for them or on your own. I think
Correct.
that's one of the most significant challenges that I see my colleagues experience when they move from that doer role to the
Yeah.
leader of the people who are doing. It's, knowing that you can, but knowing that you shouldn't necessarily do it for them.
And it's hard because it's always easier to do it yourself. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you've done it, so
Yeah.
it's easier and faster, but, like, you're not gonna get the same outcome as somebody who has learned how to do it. It's also an evolution of, like, when you're used to doing everything, you feel kind of useless when, like, you're directing, and you have to get over that because like, the time that you're spending doing the thinking work is actually more valuable in your new role than it was in the role where you were actually doing the work yourself.
I hope our listeners are paying attention to that. That is an incredible lesson that it takes so many of us years to learn, by, like, scaling up and realizing that you can't go any further until you get some help and get other people to do things on your behalf with your direction. Thank you for that. One more question in kind of this phase of the pivot. What surprised you most about the person that you've become during this season of change?
See, I think what surprised me the most is how much more I am laughing. And I know that that feels like a very personal thing, but there's a level of enjoyment in this phase that allows me to be a better mom, allows me to be more present, and to really have more fun, both in the work that I'm doing, but also in the time that I'm not working. And, I sleep better at night and as well, which, has been a huge, I would say, hurdle over the last few years. So, um, that is something that I don't think I expected, but have been really happy to see as, this change has happened.
Thank
That's
you for
really
sharing
interesting.
that. Oh my gosh,
We
I
all want more laughing and
and more fun. We want more fun in our lives.
yeah.
You're
I
probably
know,
gonna have
right?
lots of people reaching out to you saying, "Hey, can I come work with you? It sounds like you're having fun."
I get that a lot actually, so I hope that I get some more of that.
Yeah. It sounds like you had a little bit of a partner in doing all of this, but is there anything else that you learned, or that you were taught about the growth and reinvention of yourself through the people that you worked with, or things that they told you, or just insights that you got from them that helped you do this reinvention?
Well, I mean, I think people have been incredibly supportive, and when I've questioned myself, they have told me to hold my ground, both
Yeah.
of you included, in that. And then the things that were unnatural to me, how do you start to build that muscle and understanding that that was normal was important. I think it's really easy to question yourself throughout this process and say, "Am I really good enough to do this?" And if I didn't have the network that I have or the support of folks like Sangram Vajri and Brian Brown at Go to Market Partners, who immediately said, "Of course, we want you to be a part of go to market partners. Like, you're going to do great." Like, I may not have felt like this was going to be successful. And, it takes some time to start getting people to want to work with you and it's not a, it's not natural to like try and sell yourself, even if you're used to selling someone's product. And, if I had not stuck with it, it's the only reason that I've been able to really stick with it is the fact that I've had such an amazing support system and people who've done it themselves, or people who've experienced my work, like Gina Killy, who, were like, of course, like I wanna support you in this journey and, helped me launch the company itself.
Yeah, that sounds like something Jean would do. She's fantastic at that.
She's the
I
best.
mean, your support system is so critical. Um, and I kind of feel like if you're really set on what you're doing, find the people who will support you. Um, because, if you're gonna do it anyway, right, you want to have that support system following you along and supporting you along the way versus holding you back or pulling you back.
Yeah, because like, you're gonna question yourself, and that's natural.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
you need to be able to have sounding boards who can help you work through those things.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to find, and, I am a very outgoing person, so but that doesn't mean that it's it can be hard to admit that you're having a hard time or that you're struggling through something. So it's
Yeah.
I encourage everybody to be open and honest and find people who can help them navigate the way forward.
Yeah. And it's you find out pretty quickly who means it when they say, "I'm here to help," or "How can I help you?" or "What can I do to advance what you're working on?" versus the ones who say it as a nicety. Um,
Absolutely.
it's like those people who really don't mean it, they disappear, pretty quickly, and you learn not to spend too much energy on that.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, you have to find your community and, pull them through with you and, and that's what I think has helped me feel like I still work with people even though I'm on my own.
Yeah. Well, and you need people that challenge you too. You don't want people that
Absolutely.
just say, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Go for it."
We have
You want people
ChatGPT for that.
you want you want people to challenge your thinking and give you good advice because that's going to shape how you do it and when you do it and if everything is aligned, right?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice you can get is sometimes the person who's saying, "Look, like, I think you may be thinking about this the wrong way. Like, how do we think about these different scenarios and what that could mean?" And it's been I've had both, which has been great. Like,
Yeah.
even in, how do you focus your business? How do you make sure that you don't do too much or too little? And it's incredible to see how people think about things differently than you do and how that helps build a business in a different way than maybe you would have if you hadn't had that support.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Susan, let's do rapid fire.
Oh, yeah. So this is one of my favorite questions is what piece of advice would you give to somebody who is standing at the edge of their next pivot or their next big career change, trying to figure out what do I do next and how do I do this?
So find somebody who knows you well, but will tell it to you straight and back test whether or not
Mhm.
it's something you should do or something you're ready to do, and be fearless. Like, there's always the ability to try something. If it doesn't work, it's not like you can't make a change and go back to whether that's a full-time job or not. It is worth it to explore. Just make sure that you've got good counsel on your side as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those trusted
Given
advisors.
that you have been in some of the entertainment, is there a book, a quote, a song Something that sort of
movie,
captures your
something.
journey? Have you been singing something?
So I looked at this one and I thought about it, and there's a quote that I think is captured my career overall, and then there is a song that may be a little controversial, but I'm going to share it with you. So the quote is "Lift as you rise." Like lift others, make that your job and your role, and good things will happen to you
That
along the
just
way.
gave me chill bumps, Jen.
Aw.
Oh my goodness.
I love it.
Now, on the flip side, giving that the wedding of the year just occurred and I am a newer Taylor Swift fan, I really enjoyed certain parts of the song "Canceled" from Life of a Showgirl.
Oh gosh.
Um, there's a lot of pieces around, like, sharpening who you are and and kind of taking situations that you've now learned from and coming at them in a different way, in addition to, like, I don't wanna bring a tiny violin to a knife fight anymore because I don't wanna be in any knife fights anymore. So I
Hmm.
think that that's been a big kind of evolution in my journey is choosing who I work with, the types of companies and the types of missions that I'm getting involved with, and so those are a couple of lines from that one that I think are kind of appropriate.
And truly living that no asshole rule.
Exactly.
We have to do that. That is imperative for our life focus and our ability to stay sane.
Yeah. Okay, I've got
Absolutely.
one more,
You
one
got
more.
it.
So looking ahead, what are you most excited about in this next chapter?
I am most excited about building a company I've always wanted to work for and being able to bring others through that journey, and feeling like that's becoming real. So I try to kind of keep things light for the summer this year, but like I'm starting to see real demand for what I'm doing. And that's exciting and scary at the same time, but it gives me the confidence that I'm doing the right thing and that I am going to be able to bring others along and build something of value for myself and my family.
That's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Jen, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing your journey, your words of wisdom, those key phrases, and the takeaways that I think we can all take away from this conversation about really leaning into what brings you joy and makes you laugh, and finding ways to build your community, and working with people that you want to work with, and building the company that you've always wanted to work for. There's a ton of good stuff in this session, and I know our listeners are going to enjoy it. Um, so that's all for us at the Pivot Effect today. Um, Make sure that you check out our website and go take a look at the annual HR Systems Survey report that our Chief Research Officer and her team are building for us. Talks all about our HR technology and where all of our vendors sit in the space. Be sure to listen to the other shows in the HR Huddle. Spilling the tea on HR tech. Stacy and Cliff keep us up to date with what's happening in the world of HR tech. And Cliff also handles HR We Have a Problem. So anything that you can imagine that might be happening in the world of HR right now, Cliff and his guests are talking about. Jen, thanks for joining us today. Amazing conversation. Where can people find you online and via social?
Thank you for having me. I am on LinkedIn. I have also a newsletter on LinkedIn as well. So if you can follow Lessons from the Trenches for insights on go to market and hopefully some hot takes. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook if anybody wants to follow me there. But my door is always open, maverickmeridian.com. And if you need any advice or just someone to listen, I'm always willing to do that for people.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Teri, for leading us through this conversation. Thanks to our marketing team that always makes sure that our podcast are published and polished and ready to go. And thank you for tuning in. We love hearing from you. Please drop us a line. If there are topics that you'd like us to cover, if there are people that you'd like us to talk to, or if you would like to be a guest on the Pivot Effect, just let us know. So that's it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. You can subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app. Please leave us a review if you have a minute. Drop us a line, schedule a chat on our website, and we'll be back next time with more tactics and strategies for your future.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.